what was it like to meet the Queen?
Well, she's extraordinary, okay? Firstly, I think she was a bit like meeting like an old grandmother. She's very short and small and sweet looking, and, she's not what you expect at all. But what was lovely was what she said to me. She was so knowledgeable about the product I'd made, which was Micromap at the time. She was so knowledgeable about it and about me, it just astonished me. So either someone had just briefed her before I spoke to her, or she had actually looked it up. She was very, very lovely to me, very friendly, very warm. And she gave me this OBE, which is an incredible honor for me to have. It's kind of something that, I just think I'm very lucky, incredibly lucky to have it, and, it's probably way more than I deserve, but it's a lovely thing for me to have. I can't believe it, actually. So, yeah, meeting her was incredibly special, incredibly.
Welcome to the Invention Stories podcast, where we share stories of inventors who turn their idea into a product. Please visit our website at www.inventionstories.com. And now, from the Invention Stories Podcast World Headquarters Studios in Morro Bay, California, is our host, Robert Baer.
Welcome to the Invention Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Robert Baer, and thank you for listening. You're listening to episode 24, Jeff Woolf and his invention, the Morpher Helmet. This episode is the third and final part of a three-part series. The Invention Stories Podcast is brought to you by the Socket Saver. Do you have loose wall sockets in your house? The Socket Saver is an easy, safe, and effective solution. More information can be found at www.socketsaver.com. This Invention Stories Podcast episode is a Skype interview, and at times Jeff is sharing with me the details of the Morpher Helmet. We've got Jeff Woolf on the line, so let's get back to it. So even your very first prototype that you were ready to bring to manufacture, that had the same sort of hinge or the lack of traditional hinge?
Yeah.
I was expecting to see a little hinge or something. So right off the bat, your very first one never had like what people imagine a hinge to have, huh?
No, it had this sort of a hinging mechanism, but it was very hard to think how to get... There's a lot of geometry that you can't, a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of geometry that goes on in here. This is why it's, the patent's quite comprehensive because it's quite hard to get a shape that's round like that to flatten like that. So there's quite a lot that goes on that you don't really see. I mean, that's not obvious, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. You found a manufacturer, you decided on a manufacturer, and I saw that from the video that you brought it to him. He loved it, and he decided to make a special deal with you, and then he made them wrong. He made them too big. If you gave him the actual one, how did he wind up making them far too big? Was it cheaper?
He's the world's biggest helmet manufacturer, so you'd think he should know his stuff. And he's a good manufacturer. But somewhere, I don't know where, because they're used to making rigid helmets, that's what they do. And somewhere, in the translation of this into their CAD, their computer-aided design, they ignored all of the gaps. So they ignored that gap, this gap here, this gap here, this gap here. I don't know how they did it. So they assumed, they sort of made this full size but ignored the gaps. So when they'd finished all the tooling, and this is $100,000 later and a year later, this is a long time later, they suddenly realized when they molded the first one, it was absolutely huge. It was this much longer, if you can imagine, because it was all those gaps added to what they'd already made. So when you opened it up and put it on a head, it was like it would fit a gibbon, but it wouldn't fit a human. It was just ridiculous. And it's so fundamental, you kind of... there's so many times I wanted to give this up. There have been so many nightmares. And, all my friends, family, everyone's been saying, this is killing you, Jeff. You've got to give this up. Go and get a job in a shop. Go and get a job doing anything. And I nearly did so many times. But it's only my pride, I guess, that kept me going. I don't know what it was. Some sort of belief. I don't know. But it's
So
been
your friends and family were like discouraging you? That's unusual. Most of the time I hear like, oh yeah, my family was saying, go for it. It's awesome.
well, I think they were saying go for it at first, but I think once 1 year, 2 years, 3 years had gone, still saying go for it. 4 years, Jeff, are you sure you're doing the right thing? 5 years, Jeff, for God's sake, enough already. Go and get another job. 6 years, Anyway, we're finally there. And I'm bloody pleased I didn't listen to them.
Right on. You actually wound up doing some crowdfunding here and had great success, and then you went to go have them made again, and then you got them back, and then you submitted them for safety inspection. I would have thought is that how it went? Because I would have thought that you would have submitted it to a safety inspection before you actually had them produced.
No, you build with safety inspection in mind. So you build knowing what the rules are, and you kind of incorporate them in what you're trying to build, but you can't get certification until you've actually got product from the very tool that you're using. Oh. So the product has to be identical to what you're selling, or you can't get the certification, which kind of makes sense. So luckily, my factory, they've got the biggest testing facility in the world in the factory. They can't certify anything, but they can simulate the exact same tests that the certification companies are going to use. And they're really expert at understanding what needs to happen so that the helmet's going to survive a crash at 14 kilometers an hour, and when it's been frozen or when it's been soaked overnight or whatever. And that's kind of what they have to do.
I wanted to ask you about the Indiagogo, and I love Indiagogo and Kickstarter. I think it's even more so important for the information that you get, the market research.
Yes.
And that always gets kind of glossed over because everybody goes, I want to make some money. But I keep saying, hey, you want to see if your product would really be selling. And I know a lot of companies actually just use it for that with no intention of actually selling it. But it sounded like you weren't doing all that hot. And then all of a sudden you just took off like a ball of fire. Do you think like somebody at Indiagogo looked at it and goes, I love this, and really helped to push it into the front?
No.
Just one person loved it? Or
I mean, they're absolutely adamant, and I believe this is true, that they've got algorithms that they can't influence anything at all. It's all about the number of hits it gets, there's a whole algorithm built into there. And this is kind of a legal requirement for Indiegogo and Kickstarter. They can't actually promote it themselves, but what is basically their kind of search engine and algorithm looks at the number of hits, the number of investments over a certain period, and then it rises or falls based on that. You're so right in what you say. Firstly, it's changing the whole world, the crowds. I use the crowd for all sorts of things. I designed my logo with the crowd, I do all sorts of things with the crowd. It's incredible, and it means I can contact people all over the world at once to get a job done. Now, with Indigogo and Kickstarter, it's opening up a whole new world for inventors now and for new products. What is really sad and what amazes me is that there are people out there are idiots who will invest in something that's obviously never going to work. Well, more fool them. There are people like that, because there are people out there, and there are also people using Indiegogo and Kickstarter. There are kind of con men making these great plans. Oh, we can make this incredible, incredible pair of glasses where the lens changes color. And I don't know, they make something up, people invest in it, and then they run off with the money. And that happens, and that's a shame. But for those who are genuine like me, and like the vast, like 99%, it's the most amazing tool for market research. You're absolutely right. Because I got people all the time talking to me back and forth. What if it does this? Why isn't it doing that? Can it do this? But that whole engagement, it was fantastic, fantastically useful.
Were you checking it every day and kind of getting discouraged, and then one day you looked at it and it was like, God, that must have felt good?
Well, let's try. I mean, it took me about 9 months having written my campaign before I pressed go, because I was so scared of getting it wrong. I was so scared the video was no good, so scared people wouldn't like it. I just didn't want that to happen. And I wish I'd have pressed it sooner. Anyway, then when I pressed the button, as soon as I pressed it to go live, I thought, oh my God, why did I choose a $35,000 target? I should have chosen $20,000 or $10,000. I'll never make the target. And then all the time I was berating myself. It was slowish in the first few days, but that often happens on Indiegogo. So I'm thinking, it's a failure. No one likes it. But I was checking it not once a day. I was checking it probably 15 times an hour. I mean, I was just online all the time. I was obsessed. And it was really lovely watching it begin to turn the corner. And then when it passed its target, I was just ecstatic. And then it just went on, strength to strength to strength, as you've seen. But then it became a nightmare because we had to start delivering, and we had first the tool was built to the wrong side. Then there was a fire at the factory. Then a year later, another fire at the factory. And all these things, what I've done, it's just my nature, I think. I'm not a great businessman because I'm very, very honest with people about what's going on. Disarmingly so sometimes, but I think it's important because I'm not a very good liar. So I just I told people what was going on. And there were always some people on Indiagogo that would have a go at me and go, for God's sake, I put my money in 18 months ago. You're ripping me off. What's going on? But what was beautiful was lots of people would then jump to my defense and go, hold on a minute. Jeff's working really hard. Read his things. He's doing this. You should be supporting him. You shouldn't be telling him what. There was all these people I've never met in my life supporting me. Fantastic. It was a great experience, I have to say.
It sounds like a great experience, especially with the outcome. I hate to take you off the high that you're feeling now, but I got to address it. What about people copying or, jumping your claim there, your patent? And it seems like...
I think there's lots of ways to look at it. One way is to say, if I'm being copied by the Chinese, it means I've got a successful product, because they're only going to copy something that's successful because they don't take risks, people that copy. So that's the only plus side there is. On the downside, it's very, 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 very hard to make Morpher. It's incredibly complicated. You know, with all of these bits inside, I can show it's very hard to get all the balance of the tooling. It's not like a piece of electronics. Even an iPhone, it's complex, but all of the technology is known. This is all about a lot of very skillful molding. And I might be copied one day, and I'm just going to have to cope with it if I am. I've got my patent cover. So let's say a Chinese company copies me and then they sell to Walmart. Well, because I'm patented in the States, I just put an injunction on any Walmart shipments of this product. No one's going to operate, really. It's not like a Prada handbag where someone's going to... I don't think the profit's enough for people to rip it off like that. When you've got a $1,000 handbag and you can buy it in China for $50, then people might be doing it. But with this helmet, people will rip me off, I suppose, eventually. But I've just got to look on it and say, well, it's obviously a success if people are doing that.
That's a healthy attitude to have. Smart. I
just got to try and stay ahead of that with... there'll always be Me Too products. I've got to try and stay ahead of it by keeping on developing new Morphers. And I've got some exciting plans for new Morphers with really exciting electronics and all sorts.
Yeah, I was wondering what was coming next, but I didn't know if you wanted to keep that under wraps. And
some of the stuff I've got to keep under wraps, but I've got some unbelievably exciting stuff we're developing in Hong Kong at the moment. Yeah, unbelievable, electronic-wise. But, I mean, a lot of it, it's a long way away. It's 18 months away before anything hits the streets, at least. So, but there are exciting plans.
And now it's time for a commercial break. The Invention Stories podcast is brought to you by the Socket Saver. Do you have loose wall sockets? The Socket Saver is an easy, safe, and effective solution. No repairs necessary, no circuit breakers involved, no electrical knowledge or mechanical skills required. Socket savers are inexpensive, efficient, and portable. For more information, please visit www.socketsaver.com. Is it easier for you now to manage your work-life balance than before?
Yeah, for the first time since our second crowdfunding, which was the Cedars one, which was to raise working capital. Since then, I've been able to employ a chairman, a COO, a secretary, or like an assistant, and now another part-time assistant and a part-time accountant. And all of a sudden, oh my God, it's so much easier. I'm now not working as hard as I was. I'm not working 100 hours a week. And I'm able to pass things, can you deal with that? Can you deal with them? Can you deal with this? It's wonderful, wonderful. Because I was doing it all before, everything. And now I no longer have to do that. So yeah, thank God, it's getting a lot easier, which means that I'll be able to grow the company better, I think.
Delegation, yeah, absolutely. where can I buy it? Like, I live here in California. I can go to the website, www.
.morpherhelmet.com. Yeah. Well, this is another strange thing. I had this vision, and I don't think it's going to happen, that we'd only sell online and not through retailers. But we're now beginning to have distributors buy it all over the place. But right now, it's really mainly easiest to buy it online. We've also been on QVC in the UK where we sold out, and they've reordered double as much. And so it's online and TV shopping. But I think eventually it will end up in retailers as well. But right now, I suppose, because we're still very new, we're going on to Amazon next. So I'm just literally, as you and I speak, the product is about to be picked up from Hong Kong to be shipped to Amazon. I mean, the shippers, I think, are going in tomorrow to pick it up. We've got them all palletized. And they're going to Juliet, Indiana, which is where I think the warehouse is for this particular Amazon warehouse. And then they're going to be shipped out from there all over the States on Amazon Prime. So, I mean, I think right now, get it from the website, but pretty soon you'll be able to get them from other online retailers. And then eventually they might be in some stores.
Yeah, because it seems like there's a bicycle store in every city in America, and I would imagine in most worlds. So
yeah.
You wouldn't rather have them be able to put their hands and see it and open it up for themselves?
I think there is that. I think a part of my reluctance at first was I thought people wouldn't like it when they saw it necessarily in the flesh, but it's not what's going on. Everyone that sees it seems to love it. So I think you're probably right. And I think slowly we will begin that. We'll begin that getting into retailers around the world. But it's all about producing enough to do that. And we're already producing as many as we can just to keep up with sales at the moment. So eventually that will happen, yeah.
That's fantastic that you're going full bore just to keep up. That's the dream of every inventor.
I know.
Do you just have one size available now? I know that it morphs, and that's part of the name Morpher Helmet.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's got just one size, but it's got this thing called a fit system in the back. So if you can see this piece here.
Okay.
It closes in for smaller heads. So that will be for a kind of teenage girl all the way in there. And then it opens out like that, which is more for a big man, like you and me. So basically there's that fit system. And once it's set, it stays set. So it's one size, which copes with most heads, apart from about 3% of men who are bigger than this. It's quite a wide range. So it's medium, but it's quite a wide range of people. We will be producing helmets for kids, though, eventually.
I'm surprised you don't have one that's aimed directly at kids.
No, well, that's only because
3-year-olds, 4-year-olds.
No, it's only because of funding and the fact that the tool costs, probably $100,000 to build a tool to make the things. So we will do it. But it's just, I'm waiting now for final quotations from the factory for a tool to make helmets for 6 years old and above. And then we'll do even younger ones eventually. So I'm trying it, but it's all about not having a lot of funding and only just, we're only just at the stage that we're beginning to grow now properly.
I used to work for Frito-Lay, and they get these kids into knowing who Chester Cheeto and eating Cheetos before they're able to speak. So it seems like if you got a kid that wore your Morpher helmet as a 3-year-old and 4-year-old, they wouldn't even want to go back to another helmet. I mean, the idea of another helmet would
that's a really good point. No, that's a really good point, and it's absolutely true. So, I hope that we will get there with that, Robert. I'm hoping so.
Right, there's only so much time of the day, and you have
correct. And so only so much money in the bank as well. And there was something else, hang on. Yeah, the other thing I forgot to tell you during the development of this was it was murder, especially after the first tool was no good. Getting the factory to build the second tool was murder. And I probably spent 6 or 7 months of every year living in China next to the factory in shit conditions, eating the most disgusting food, to have to go into the factory every day to make sure they were doing it. And every time I came back to England, work would stop again. I literally had to be there all the time, which was horribly damaging on my relationship with my daughter, who was 13, 14, 15 at the time. It was just horrible. I didn't get to see her and she didn't get to see me much. And it was really awful. So there'd been a lot of other costs, emotional costs, in getting this thing off the ground for me. So, now it's becoming a success. I'm just really pleased, and it makes it all worthwhile.
It seems like you've been a success for quite a while. Like, I found you actually from the Time 2016 Invention of the Year, and you've won all kinds of awards.
Yeah.
But I've got to ask you, you got to meet the Queen, right?
I got what?
You got to meet the Queen? Did you meet the Queen?
That was the most amazing, unbelievable.
I've got to ask you, what was it like to meet the Queen?
Well, she's extraordinary, okay? Firstly, I think she was a bit like meeting like an old grandmother. She's very short and small and sweet looking, and, she's not what you expect at all. But what was lovely was what she said to me. She was so knowledgeable about the product I'd made, which was Micromap at the time. She was so knowledgeable about it and about me, it just astonished me. So either someone had just briefed her before I spoke to her, or she had actually looked it up. She was very, very lovely to me, very friendly, very warm. And she gave me this OBE, which is an incredible honor for me to have. It's kind of something that, I just think I'm very lucky, incredibly lucky to have it, and, it's probably way more than I deserve, but it's a lovely thing for me to have. I can't believe it, actually. So, yeah, meeting her was incredibly special, incredibly.
It sounds like a lot of these dreams that you've had have come true, and of course, you've definitely paid the price and the sacrifices. I want to thank you for taking your time, but I just wanted to ask one last question for you, and again, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
What advice would you give to somebody who's got an idea for an invention? What would you want them to understand or to know?
Well, there's a few things. Firstly, I think it's really important that they're very careful not to tell people about it generally before it's patented. Because if they do tell people about it before it's patented, it becomes what's called in the public domain. And once it's in the public domain, you can't patent it. So they mustn't tell. Sometimes people go to the press, I notice, and they go, I've got this great new invention or this great idea, and I'm going to patent it. Well, once it's been in the press, forget about it. You can't patent it. It's gone, that opportunity. So firstly, don't tell anyone except for in the strictest confidence. Secondly, I would say the people that you do tell, and you should tell some people in confidence, should be your family and your close friends, and you have to ask them to be incredibly honest and candid with you. And if they think it's a rubbish idea, they've got to tell you. Because so many people have spent so many years developing ideas that you and I would look at them, you go, God, you are mad, mate. That's never going to sell, even if you do it. So people have to be very honest with inventors and say, sorry, that's been done, or sorry, I've seen that, or sorry, it's not going to work. So I would say to any young inventor, go for it, absolutely. It's great that you're inventing things, go for it. But make sure you don't tell anybody about it till it's patented, apart from your very close friends and family, in confidence, and ask them to be really candid with you and really honest with you about what they think about your idea. And that's great advice.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was just thinking about all those inventors who came to you and you were sitting on the other side of that table. And were there any that you looked at and then you saw them later on the market and they were selling really well? I mean, or were they just kind of good and bad? And
yeah,
you must have seen some really great ones.
They were all ends of the scale. They were absolutely, some stuff I looked at, I thought, for God's sake, you're mad. But I didn't want to say that. I said it more gently than that. I'd say, look, I really don't think there's a market. Some people get very belligerent and angry when you say that. They go, you don't know what you're talking about. You've seen it on Shark Tank.
Sure.
You get a whole raft of people. Some ideas are great. And you go, oh, my God, that's fantastic. And you need to see this person and that person and do this and do that. And yes, I have seen them on the market. And others, I just look at the people and I think, you're from another frigging planet, mate. Don't give up your day job, But you've got to be polite, of course. Most of the time, I take my hat off to anyone who's willing to give up what they're doing and go out and try and innovate. It's what makes the world work. It's what we do as humans. It's why we're civilized. It's why we're not still in the jungle. Because we've invented a whole brave new world, which for the most is very good. For the most.
You've been listening to episode 24 of the Invention Stories podcast, Jeff Woolf and the Morpher Helmet Part 3. I want to thank Jeff for being our guest today. More information can be found at www.morpherhelmet.com. The Invention Stories podcast has been sponsored by The Socket Saver. Does the plug fall out of your wall socket while vacuuming, drying your hair, using a power tool, or recharging your electronic devices? The Socket Saver is an easy, safe, and effective solution. Please visit www.socketsaver.com. If you're an inventor who would like to be featured on the Invention Stories podcast, have a suggestion on how we can make this podcast better, or would like to become a sponsor, please contact us at inventionstoriespodcast@gmail.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we invite you to write a positive review for us on iTunes. An easy way to get there is to go to www.inventionstories.com/review. More information and show notes can be found at our website, www.inventionstories.com. Thank you very much for listening today, and please tell a friend.